Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of SF ISACA, Open Silicon Valley, we'd like to welcome you to AI Governance Seminar. Thank you so much for attending this event today. All of us are gathered here because we have witnessed the rapid proliferation of AI and ML applications. Organizations increasingly recognize the potential of AI to enhance customer experience, revolutionize business processes, and streamline operations. However, this surge in AI adoption has triggered a corresponding rise in concerns regarding the ethical, transparent, and responsible use of these technologies. AI governance has emerged as the cornerstone for responsible and trustworthy AI adoption. Organizations must proactively manage the entire AI lifecycle, and strong ethical and risk management frameworks are essential for navigating the complex landscape of AI applications. The seminar today is going to explore the opportunity presented by AI for transformation of business operations, the need to balance this capability with regulatory compliance, governance, ethics, and the emerging frameworks being designed to address that. We are also fortunate today to have amongst us as our keynote speaker the founder and CEO of Securiti.ai, an emerging company leading the AI revolution. Rehan Jalil is not new to the world of startups and innovation. Rehan and I know each other both personally and professionally for several years, and I know him as the person who got out of grad school just in time to found a company while the dot-com boom was taking place. And that was the trend at that time, which was networking, and he found a company called Vicorus with a successful exit. And then, no stranger to continuing to innovate, he then founded a company in cybersecurity in the CASB space, Elastica, got another successful exit, and then fast forward a few more years, founded another company, which is the company that he's heading today, Securiti.ai. So we are really fortunate to have amongst us a serial entrepreneur. I mean, you've heard this term before, but he's really a living and breathing example of that. So we are really privileged to have him share with us his thoughts about the next big trend in cybersecurity and technology just in general. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Rehan.
Thank you so much. You know, it feels really bad to hear about yourself, but thanks a lot. I'm really delighted here, especially here in the city, talking about this topic, because this is actually the center of the innovation. I mean, literally, the whole world is looking here and says, San Francisco, where all the AI things are going on. But the good thing, I think, hopefully will show that it's being done responsibly. That people in the valley, some are actually really forward-looking in terms of the innovation. Then side by side, people who are looking really forward-looking how to guard it, so that it's actually beneficial to humanity, not detrimental to take the valley. And hopefully this will be a good discussion. I'm joined by here some really experts in this. Mike, I will really call out. Mike is an expert in cyber privacy law. Flew in. Thank you for coming in from Southern California. Really appreciate it, and we call you out in this time. The other thing I would talk about, I wouldn't call it a keynote. I would literally call it a discussion, because I'm sure I'm here because it's ISACA. There are clearly professionals in this room where we can have a discussion. I want to learn from you. I'll share what we're seeing. A bit of an advantage that certainly I have, because we're working with some of the largest organizations, thinking through this topic of how to think about AI is being dropped into the enterprise, what should not happen, because it can create harm. Its data is actually of an enterprise is the heart of it, and if you don't take care of it properly, it could really mean serious issues, and we'll talk about some of those things along the way. So let's talk through what organizations are actually thinking about. Let's say here, I think we all probably will agree that this is definitely one of the largest transformations ever. I will give you a bit of an anecdote, because this all looks like nice, bumper stickers. But let's intuitively feel about it. Is it true? And to try to combine it, I think this has maybe a bit of a lag. I'll just use it here. you may have all seen this thing. It's not created by me. It's by, credit goes to Robin Hanson. He actually created this, the chart to say human history, it is flat in prosperity for the longest of times, and it took a steep curve up, and all of a sudden the prosperity actually started emerging in information age. You know, and information age kind of took it the sharp curve, and that's his slide. I'm just kind of reiterating here, these things that actually happened. Steam engine came, and electricity came, and electronics, and all that, computers came, and this took off. Of course, many of you have seen this thing. What I've tried to correlate to it, which I added to it, why did this happen? Like, let's talk about why did this happen? Why magically here the steam engine shows up and this curve starts going up? And maybe I'll put it on there, humans actually are distinctly, there's more superior to any other living organism that we know of today. Why is that? Why are they distinctly more superior? I'd like you to, all us to kind of contribute, participate in it. Any thoughts?
Is your time in reasoning?
Reasoning is one, absolutely.
Usage of tools.
Usage tool, learning.
Learning from one generation to the next.
And how do they do that? How do they do that? Communication. It's language. If language did not exist, humans would be, not where we are. That's the fundamental difference. That they could write, express in alphabets and sentences and then complex poetry and complex code and complex. All of a sudden, generationally, this over 8,000 generations of humans, they took off. And that's what I added into this. The alphabets were created in about 3500 BC. And then math and printing press, and people start traveling, start writing publications on scientific papers. Boom. There's no correlation. There is no accident that steam engine actually happened. And why am I saying that? Why I'm actually highlighting it here, that you should, in a gut, we should feel this is actually a massive revolution. Machines never understood language before. Just never could understand language, number crunching. Always number crunching, right? First time, it's like you give it, paper, PDF, and it will summarize it for you. You can answer questions. First time. The big difference here is that these mini brains, called large language models, give it any name, these mini brains, they don't die like humans. Once you train them, they live forever. And you can connect, over time, you will be connecting millions and billions of them together. They will just get connected, right? And they don't die like humans because we go to school for 20, 30 years and then productive life for 20 years and then die and then the kid has to learn ABCD all over again. They don't do that, right? This is happening. So this curve, I don't know where the curve, how straight can this curve be? This is massively going to change. So that bumper sticker look-like feeling, I think, is much more than that. This is real, right? So now let's talk through the enterprise, because many of us talk about responsibility for the consumer. I'm going to talk a little bit enterprise because I relate to that a little bit more. And I'd love to actually, of course, hear from you. In the enterprise, you actually have unquestionably take the same thing. Enterprise operates on data. Pick any of your operation. Data is a representation of physical thing. When you order something from Amazon, it's just bits and bytes flowing, and all of a sudden a physical box shows up within hours, a fixed physical box shows up. But data has flown somewhere, to tell somewhere to do something, and then the physical box shows up in your home. It's not data. That data effect can be, you can put AI as a mix of the data, and magic can happen. The problem really is, actually truly is this, you cannot do this in the enterprise till there are fundamental controls that exist. Why is that? We of course go over the details of why is that, is in the consumer AI, what learning people have done is to crawl the web, whatever knowledge is available, think about it, might disagree with it, that everything is legal, which I also agree with him, but they've learned from it. There's no partitioning of information that is actually on the web. But if you go to the enterprise and if you drop the same mini brain inside the enterprise, first of all, it cannot access any data because data is locked up in different systems. And those systems inherently should have controls, and it has to honor these controls. That's easier said than done. And if you don't have these controls properly done, it actually is a problem. This is the impediment. In fact, if you look at, this was Richard Darasay, Morgan Stanley, they did a survey before that and said, look, adoption of AI, what is number one priority for CIO? Is literally that. They call it data security. If you look at all the things on the left, that's called it data controls and governance. If you do not have the data governance controls in place, you cannot adopt data inside the organization. So fundamentally, you are seeing this actually is number one priority. Gartner did the same poll. You have different way of asking questions. Fundamentally, it's the same thing: security, privacy, and of course, bias and unfairness, hallucination, which means unreliability on the answers, which has to be there. So, what are the three things? What actually, talking to many of the leaders, what are the three things that actually stood out for me? Why they actually got it? If in the enterprise, if you take these large language models and drop in the enterprise, the very first thing is what data it can use. What data can touch this, or this language model can touch what data? Particularly unstructured data. Because structured data people have dealt with before. It is all about unstructured data, which is 90% of the data. PowerPoint, spreadsheets, your PDFs, your images, things that were not being dealt with before. What data you should be allowed to do, under what conditions? They need to know. Secondly, if you have the data that's generated from these models, can I trust it? Is it accurate? Is there hallucination in it? Is it giving me the right answers? How do I know if it actually is giving me the right answers? The third thing is, if you actually have, many people are trying to create chatbots and things like that and put on their website. How do I moderate it to know that it's going to represent me as a company? Because if it messes up, like one wrong sentence on, let's say, Wells Fargo Bank, one wrong sentence could completely take your reputation. That'll be in the news, right? Bad language. As simple as that. And if there's a data leakage happens through these interfaces, then it's a mess. So these are big buckets where people are really care about, and this requires full understanding and requires basically governance on top of it. So I'm going to talk to the framework that people are thinking through. When there is something as shiny as an AI and language models and all, there is always a groundswell adoption by the team members, by the employees, by everyone inside the organization. The very first thing is to even understand what AI models are popping up everywhere. And I can tell you, when we are working with some larger enterprises, there are hundreds of models popping up just by employees. They're just starting to use it, download from Hugging Face, download from here, use an API, and send the data out. There's just like a groundswell of use of not even asking anything, just using it. Just always knowing what models are actually there in the enterprise and what risks are actually there. Tied to these models, it needs to be known. And even if it's legit models being used, are they configured properly? And what is configuration really means is that if the same model is misconfigured, it may start learning from your data. If the same model is configured properly, you may be prohibiting it from learning from your data. Frozen models, called the concept of frozen models, where it's frozen, it can only answer questions but cannot learn from it. And it's a matter of one bit here and one bit not here, depending on how you configure it, right? So knowing the models and then knowing that what risks actually inherent in it is just the starting point. Then the data often in the enterprises, you actually see that it's sitting in these systems on the left. At any given time, it needs to be known what data is actually now going, touching, interacting with the AI models inside the enterprise, because some employees now building apps using it, or going to a third party which is using some AI models. You just need to know, because controls will come afterwards. If you don't even know, the controls will not happen, right? So this flow of data has to be detected, asked, and then there has to be policy-driven controls to say what data, what interactions are allowed, what's not allowed to be shut down, or what interaction is allowed, but within those interactions, what kind of data cannot be go. So take out the sensitive data out. Then if these AI systems start generating some answers and humans or your customers start interacting with these systems, knowing what is the interaction going on. If you don't know the interaction, because think about it this way, this is really cool that there's a chatbot which can answer questions, but it is also an invitation from malicious users to abuse that interface, to ask questions which is not supposed to be asked, because this interface here is a direct path to the data here. It's a direct, people have figured out, and I'll talk through what's called, their vulnerabilities that already exist, or let's say OWASP top 10 for LLMs. You can attack these systems, get passed through, there are different ways of model poisoning, or I'll go through some of those, prompt ingestion attacks and all, to basically either use it to exfiltrate data that's used to answer questions because that has important information, or attack it to penetrate and take over some of these systems. And then regulations. I think of this way, the regulations on the AI, as the fastest I think we have seen. AI has gone fast, regulations have going fast. .com boom happened in, let's say, late 90s. GDPR came in 2018, 20 years later, right? Literally. AI wave just came maybe a year and a half back, like this GPT kind of wave, and EU Act is already on the books, right? It's gone fast, and you're seeing in many geographies, ARMF is already there, Biden executive order is already there. You're going to see that actually popping, so you have to make sure the systems that are being built inside the enterprise, they're regulated, right? They have actually compliance with the regulation. So now, of course, I'm going to be mindful that not everyone is on the cyber side, so this can sound like gibberish, but I'm going to put it there, and I'm going to talk through it. This is OWASP top 10 for LLMs, which is top 10 things that if you're building AI system, not just model, because in the enterprise, it is not just about the model. It's about the entire system in which the data is going, data is coming out, and your controls information, like what things you need to be caring about. I won't go into details of it, and I'll cover it at a high level, is fundamentally it's trying to, and I'm going to show you even more complex chart, but I'm going to show you for a reason. These top 10 are sprinkled there. You don't need to probably look at all the top 10 and what those are, but what will tell you in essence what it is. The essence is that the entire system of AI, starting with your data, this is where the servers are, starting with how these data from the servers interact with the models, large language models, and starting with these large language models, how they interact with the users. The entire system has to be inspected because it can be an issue anywhere. I'll give you an example. What does the issue really mean? Many of our large customers have turned on a simple thing as a co-pilot in SharePoint. I'm sure many of you have SharePoint in your organization. They turned on the SharePoint, they turned it off. Any guesses why? It may be giving some amazing answers, but why are large organizations turning it off?
Because most of the time they did not implement any ACL.
What does ACL stand for?
Access control list.
Exactly.
Access
And this is very, very important topic. And this is true. Like many of the largest of the organizations have turned on for a few hundred people, and they figured that CFO's information can be asked by others. You ask a question, CEO's information is coming out. A company, without naming the names, have turned on Copilot. They have 63,000 people. They've turned on Copilot for 20 people. You know how many NDAs are there? 20. Because they don't know what these 20 people are going to see. First, they want to figure it out. What are these 20 people seeing? They're asking questions, what can they see? And they're an NDA. So if they see something, they cannot tell. Right? It is that bad. Right? It is not made up. This is exactly what it is. Another very global firm, they turned on basically SharePoint Copilot, And frankly, they're under, at this point, investigation because they think there was a major breach because of that. Because data just leaked, gone to some people, and then from there gone to some people because they had got access, right? And they were worried that they may be the news, right? So the point really being is that what is here in the underlying, let's say if it was representation of SharePoint, which it is not, but let's say if it was. If the controls are not right here, what co-pilots of the world are doing, if you ask an AI system a question, it's going to go and find everywhere, regardless. It doesn't know who has access control. It doesn't know it's my information or is, or Rafa's information or Mike's information. It found that information, it's going to craft an answer and give it to you. It was not getting exposed before. Now it is getting exposed. So we may think the AI governance is all about the model. No. Even the most, I would say, most credible body of work that gets done is OWASP. They are starting the work here. If you don't have this right, forget about the AI and all that. You don't even have this right. Start here. Then, of course, right models should be used. Models should be very dangerous, and talk through that also. And this has to be kept in mind. AI governance is not about just AI. It's about the entire AI system, in which has data, models, users, interactions, permissions, ACLs, security controls, compliance. All has to be looked at when you say, you actually have the right governance in place. 5 steps people are taking. This is a 5 steps approach. Discover what AI models are even popping up in your organization. For step number 1. If you don't know what AI models are there, you already don't know what's going on. Okay. Directly and indirectly. Indirectly means your developers are putting it. Indirectly means your SaaS vendors already started to use AI models, and they have your data. Like if you're using Salesforce or using any SaaS service, they have your data. They're starting to use AI models. It means your data is going to some model, right? Discover it, assess the risk. So do all sort of risk assessment on it to say, is it the right model should be using? Is it configured right? Am I going to bless it? And you will have many other variables on top of it based on the dimensions of risk, which I will talk about. Like, what does assessment mean? How do you assess it? At this point, you can call it both sanctioned and unsanctioned AI. Which ones I'm going to bless, which I'm not going to bless. But after it, once you bless something, let's call them, this is sanctioned AI in my organization, then absolutely need to know what data is going or allowed to be going. And if it is going, what kind of data cannot go. Maybe you allow ChatGPT to be used, but maybe SPI cannot go. Maybe sensitive information cannot go inside it. Controls have to be there. And these are the controls, both on the left of the model and the right of the model. Right? What data is going into the model? Does it have any sensitive information? Are you blocking it or not? Data coming out of the model going to a user, are they allowed to be seeing that information and putting controls on top? And 5th important thing is the compliance side of things. And in the discovery, basically, the main thing in the discovery is knowing the model, knowing what data is being touched, knowing what permissions may be on this data. So as soon as you connect, as soon as you actually discover these things, you need more context around it. Not just a model, but like, what is the context? Who has entitlement to it? What data is being touched? And if that data is entitlement to which people, and if you want to shut it down, you need to know who's doing it. Who is the owner of these models inside the org? You can take action on it. And this is just a discovery part of it. Then you also need to know risk. Risk is, what is this model good for? What is this model not good for? And what risks inherent it has from hallucination, bias, toxicity. There are different, of course, dimensions of risk. There's an amazing amount of work going on across various, very prestigious institutions, including Stanford Health and Carnegie Mellon and others. Combine that and look at it and say, okay, what does risk really mean? Should I actually do something about it or not? And this is kind of a context. Context is, if I have a model, what is things are around it? What data is around it? What is it coming from? Have I done an assessment on it? What risks have come out? Basically, can you automatically have it mapped? Because if you have hundreds of models, the traditional method of Q&A does not fly. You have to figure an automated way of figuring it out to say, can I get a full context and a good automated graph of it? Like what map? Can you map it? So then you can do something about it along the way. And these controls are actually on both on the data going into the model. It should be sanitized. Can you define a policy-driven sanitization on it to say, can I actually make sure no credit cards are going and no social security is going, and different things of kind of information is going through it, right? So that has to be there. And then there's a whole concept of new kinds of firewalls have emerged, right? What are these firewalls doing? If interaction with the AI system is coming through any of the Slack or Teams or your chatbot that you've created, or like a ChatGPTs, they are not traditional firewalls where it is about IP addresses and and your URL filtering and all. This is about conversation. These firewalls have to understand English or any language and understand intent. What is the intent of being asked? Is somebody trying to fool me? It's like almost like a human thinking. If somebody's asking me a question like, what is the intent? These firewalls are doubtful humans. They just doubt everything. And they look at it and say, no, it doesn't look right. I'm going to block it. And if it's sensitive information is going out, it should actually take the sensitive information out, if policy says that. It's a new class of, call them firewalls or guardrails that have come out, are needed now, where you can actually moderate the conversation and stop bad behavior or attacks that can come from outside, including prompt ingestion attacks, data poisoning attacks, and others that are coming through. And I won't go into details of these, and then regulations. That also has to be as much automation. EU AI Act, NIST ARMF framework. You have a list of these AI regulations that fundamentally are doing checks. Do you know the model rating? Do you know what data is going in? Do you know? These are fundamental checks. Do you have inventory of the data? Do you have inventory of these things? Can it be as much automated as possible so that when you have AI projects going on, you can say, I'm compliant, I'm not compliant, and things like that along the way. So which essentially, the goal really is that as professionals, the opportunity really for us, and I'll put back here, is, the community about security controls and AI governance, if we get this thing right, fundamentally you enable the use of AI. The AI actually could be extremely beneficial to humanity. Clearly, you can see the curve can go up, but it's not possible till you actually address it. So as a community, frankly, we actually can have a huge role to play in enabling the use of AI in the enterprise and also, of course, inside the consumer side also. So I'll pause here. I want to make sure that you have any questions, comments, things you agree, disagree. This is a room full of professionals. So please feel free to add on your point of view as well as ask any questions. Yes, please. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. Great presentation. I agree with everything you said. But the OWASP 10 LLM vulnerabilities. How likely is it that those are already coming into existence? Like, what's the probability or I think we lack numbers. How high of a risk those security
already have
attacks really are?
Already happening.
Yeah,
With examples.
Numbers?
We can collect numbers and we can share. There are already attacks happening with the prompt ingestion attacks is very common now. Data exfiltration attempts. So jailbreaking is very common. Where you could try to jailbreak, because when these jailbreaking means you try to contain the model to a topic and you try to fool it to say bypass. For instance, and this is very well-known examples also that, like for instance, models are trained to not talk about how to make a bomb, right? And then you try to fool it to say, pretend you basically fool the model into talking through this thing. They can still come back and tell you how to make a bomb, right? This is a very, in the consumer world, many examples of jailbreaking. In fact, I'm happy to share now there's a database of jailbreaking attempts where there are like thousands of examples in how do you jailbreak. Happy to share that, and we can float it around also. This is not theoretical at all, actually. That's why the OWASP is a very serious body. they do not do these things till this is very, very real and immediate. So that's what they actually have to work on.
When I was looking at the compliance, different standards, frameworks, and I think AI is now being incorporated in some of those. But are there how is the frameworks specific to AI, architectures, and all of those? Where are they now? How is it shaped up and being kind of communicated and being adopted by a lot of institutions?
So this AIMF is very much now enterprises are large enterprises already, because within that is best practices. So as professionals, we need to see the people have thought through it, NIST has thought through it. So they're saying, okay, these are best practices I need to do to actually do the AI projects. So those frameworks exist. EUA Act is actually framework now exists. So if you want to start with it, these are two, and by the way, they're very close to each other. In most of the things, very, very close to each other. Just like, you look at GDPR and everything is kind of falls not too far from it, right? So these two actually, I would say, anchoring it right now in the enterprises who are really trying to get ahead of the curve, put the right, practices in place around AI systems. And they are there. I mean, in fact, I'm happy to talk to you and explain how it can be actually automated. These frameworks can be automated. Yeah, please.
Do you feel like the professionals need a new set of skills to help with the enablement of the safe kind of data usage in Gen AI, or can we use what we already have and just reapply and?
It's the closest, I would say, yes, there's some more need, always some more needed. But you professionals who are in the cyber area or general governance are the closest. Mm-hmm. And frankly, almost I feel like it's their responsibility to kind of quickly catch up with it. Because what's happening is most data professionals, like data professionals, data engineers, now they call them some data plus AI engineers. They were the closest. Now it's just to drop a model and combine with the data and you can be the AI, because models can do a lot of magic. Similarly, I would say that gen governance, data governance professionals, cybersecurity, they need to just learn a bit more and go to the next. Yeah, security and governance of AI. Yeah. But it's not too far off, I would say. Yes, yes.
My question is, I have been looking at these standards for governance and data security for LLM, and it is I have a feeling that it's primarily rules-based, old traditional cybersecurity rule-based systems are being implemented on LLM. And most LLMs have huge data and their biases run in millions because of all the pre-training data that's very old has a lot of biases. How scalable this rule-based system would be? Because you can't put millions of rules.
100% right. I think of this way is that when you're trying to moderate a human language, and not in one language, you're trying to moderate in 128 languages because attack can come in any language. Because you can ask a generative AI system in that language to do something. The underlying system of security now have to understand this language and even understand intent of it. And they are far more complex than that. Because if you were to explain it, I'm sure everyone has used GPT. When you chat GPT, when you ask a question, it creates threads on the left side. What does threads mean is that you could have asked a question 2 days back, you can go back to your 2 days back topic and continue the discussion. It remembers it, right? None of the firewall and security systems are built that way. They're very transactional. They just look at what's happening right now. They don't know 2 days back what happened. They cannot correlate to it. So it's a whole new breed of security systems are getting created in which they have a very deep memory. And what conversation happened by this person a month back. In that context, if I take it forward, would it be damaging? These are not simple things to do. So rule-based systems, you can just toss them to dustbin, right? They're just not even relevant here. Because there are 128 languages with a very deep memory it has to have. It can very quickly understand that same person asked me 30 days back this question, next question now is dangerous. Because trying to jailbreak between these two questions, there are 15 days apart. That's not easy, right? But it's getting done. But it's getting done only because it's not rule-based and it's actually using generative AI itself. So machine has to counter the machine or new kind of LLMs have to counter these LLMs, right? But by the way, the hackers are doing the same. They're not bringing LLMs to actually do the conversation, figure it out, right? So it's actually it's amazingly forward-looking technologies are getting built, which the LLMs have to counter. LLMs are being used to attack. LLMs are being to counter the attack. They're attacking the LLMs. All three are actually LLMs, and only thing is, which is they're trying to get to is your data. So underlying data controls are the ones that you really need to really tighten up. You yourself said ACL is one example. Tighten that up as much as you can. And of course, the layered defense strategy. But rule-based systems don't have any chance. Yeah, please.
I mean, although the LLMs and AI present all these opportunities for the enterprise, we should definitely mention the threat and safety exposure that Elon Musk already have raised, that they can create something that will break. For example, it could break the financial markets and could cause human harm. So we should be also front and center, put all the risks that are there, such as lack of explainability, the black box, biases, and concentration of power, or even certain countries taking, like China, creating the most powerful AI which will control the global economy. So, like, we should not only look at the governance, but the AI safety side much more in depth, and they should be connected.
Very well said, actually. In fact, because I talked about enterprise, I have more things to share. I can give you more depth. Other places I can share with you. If you look at the Biden executive order, they're not talking about enterprise. I mean, of course, they're talking about their 400 different departments in federal government, how they're going to use AI. But one of the things is actually about that safety and nation states. There is about who will be regulated depending on how much GPU compute power they have. If they're talking about in terms of petaflops and all that. That's all about if somebody has a lot of those compute power. I think the rest is just is doable, right? Software is actually just open source available, language models available. It's the compute, right? So trying to basically start from there, go straight to safety. Especially things that we're not talking about here is weapons, is surveillance, the drones, the swarm of drones that can self-do things. Like, I mean, those are dangerous robots. As soon there'll be robots and they'll be going on their own. The things that we thought is just, happens in scary, science fiction. I mean, it's honestly just like possible. Like, it's not far off. So if the safety is, to your point, if safety is not well thought through, this is not about just my enterprise doesn't work. It's like humans don't work very well.
And we have the regulation, but I feel like AI is moving much more faster speed. So even though you're saying we have this regulation fast, AI is moving exponential speed, and even you can see the safety team from OpenAI resign, for example, because they're putting all these models, and they haven't been tested enough to make sure that they're safe.
Absolutely. One last question before I get kicked off. I think you were asking a question.
So we spoke about this public AI models as step one to start with the process of AI governance. But when we entrust data with one company, they will have third-party enterprises who handle that data, which we not have complete visibility.
100%.
Okay. Already implemented where we have 100% visibility as part of the compliance policies, or are we yet to achieve it?
What's happening in the enterprise is that people go through third-party assessments for basic onboarding of third-party vendors. Many large companies have invalidated that. They're saying, well, we did that 3 years back, or whatever we did. Now we know everyone is using AI models. Let's restart. Assume that doesn't exist, or add an addendum to it. So that's very common, and might maybe actually have more insight in. We are actually seeing that in all our logs. They're adding an addendum, or they just saying redo all that. Let's restart the questionnaire all over again. At some point, I think because models are going to flip-flop very, very often. Today, maybe an assessment is using one model, tomorrow they're using something else. Very difficult to automate because it's like dark. But I think the assessment probably needs to be much more. You have to keep assessing to see what model are you using. Is it safe or not? Where is the data going? Right? You may think data is safe, but third party is sending it. And we have seen examples. Third-party vendors, and we are also third-party vendors. So I'm just saying that you need to really assess carefully. They are just taking your data and just calling APIs on OpenAI. not even figuring it out that this data is going to be learned and be sitting on a web very, very. Not one, many examples we have seen. Right? I know I'll take a little bit more time. Yeah.